Hey gang, I want to share with you my experience as a first-time user of the ChatGPT API. I have a Surface Pro here, so not a very powerful computer, and I did this while I was watching my son's football practice out in, out in the field. But I had my Surface Pro, I was connected to the internet, and I decided it was time to try to accessing an API from one of the GPTs. And I hadn't done that before, so I decided maybe the best way to do this would be do it on a Colab notebook. You could also run it like locally on your computer using Python, but I'm trying to show those who don't want to install anything locally what they can do to accomplish this. So this experience I'm going to walk through is what I learned while trying to make my first contact with ChatGPT's API, and also trying to use a Colab notebook. And there's a couple of delightful surprises that I discovered along the way. But in the end, this is what I got. So I asked ChatGPT, hey, I'm teaching my son, 10-year-old son, about entrepreneurship using small businesses. Give me your top 3 suggestions for my summer's business, my kid's summer's business. And what I do is I tend to ask all the major GPTs. So I ask Gemini and Meta's AI, Llama, certainly ChatGPT, and also Claude. And I'll compile their answers, put them all in one big document, and ask some sort of GPT to give me the top list of all of them combined. And that's sort of a mixture of experts, if you're familiar with that term in AI. But I wanted to first get the first one down, which is just ChatGPT. My goal is to add 2 or 3 of these, add them all in, and then do the same thing, but just with one query using Python. So I didn't want to run it locally, as I said. I just wanted to be on the cloud. So what I'm using is something called so the results, I'm sorry, the results are right here. There's the top 3 that ChatGPT gave me. Okay, it said lemonade stand, arts and crafts sale, pet sitting, dog walking. So, it could be refined any better because my boy's a little older and he's done some of these, but it's a good start, and I'll do the same thing for my daughter. But here's how my experience was. The first thing I did was I just went to ChatGPT's chat interface, and I asked it, hey, can I use Python to submit questions to you? I know that it could, but I wanted to get it to generate the code for me. So it generated a pretty good baseline set of code. There was a challenge that came up along the way, which I'll talk about when I'm looking at the notebook. But this got me 80 to 90% there. And of course, I knew that I needed to get an API key was one challenge, so I had to go do that. But I copied and pasted this, and also the endpoint had to change. That was another thing. So I copied and pasted this into a Colab notebook. If you have a Google account, then you have access to Colab notebooks. They're free, and as long as you don't abuse the system, you can use them to run Python like I'm doing here. They're really slick for debugging some Python code before you actually, say, put it in a script that you run locally or whatever. And so I started out with that. I copied and pasted it right in here, and I ran it. And of course, I didn't have an API key yet, so I had to go and get an API key. So what I did was I logged into my ChatGPT account, and there's the ability to go create an API key. I can't exactly remember where I had that at, but there's an API key that you can make inside your platform, openai.com. There's a way to do it. They ask you for a telephone number, they text you, validate it's you, and then they give you the API key, save it locally, and then when I first started out, you'll see a copy of my code over here on the side. I actually just copy and paste it right into the code. That's totally fine. Do that for now. But of course, you eventually will want to hide it if you're doing videos, or just make it easy to use for a bunch of different scripts. The common way you do that is you make an environment variable, and it so happens that Colab notebooks enable you to make a secret, and you can just basically make an environment variable, copy and paste it in there, and then you refer to the environment variable by name, like I did here. So again, it started out with just a set of code, and it says, hey, your API key. The other thing I didn't know is that I had to actually choose an endpoint. So once I got the API key working, again, I just copied and pasted it in there, ran it. I had some errors. And I didn't know how to see what the errors were initially. But it threw some errors at the bottom. Python will throw something, the Colab will throw some errors for you. And so it eventually said, hey, this isn't right. I need the correct URL. So I looked up what endpoints were available for ChatGPT. And there's a whole bunch of them, but basically under the platform at OpenAPI API interface, there's these different endpoints. And I'm looking at the chat one, And so you can go up to the top here and you see here's the actual endpoint that you use in your code. And they have some samples over here, which is really nice. And I'll talk about one of the errors in the code I was given by ChatGPT that got fixed along the way. But anyhow, so that was the next step, is I had to get the right endpoint. So that was in there. And then for the most part, the rest of this worked except for the actual response. So when I ran it again, I didn't have this little window open here, and it would fail, and I wasn't quite sure why it failed. So I was like, I need a way to debug. And I asked ChatGPT about that. I said, how can I debug this? And it said, oh, well, you can go in. Actually, it asked me about here's why I asked it about the API. And it actually told me how to go and get a key. So that was kind of cool. I forgot I put it in here, or it was in here. So anyhow, I wanted to find out how to debug in the Colab notebook. I didn't know I could check variables and stuff in there. And so I asked it, hey, how can I debug in there? And it told me about PDB, which is also cool for a local Python script. But basically, once you import it, you can run it anywhere in your code, and it acts like a command prompt, and it'll pause the execution and allow you to check like variable names and stuff, which is kind of cool. So that's what I did originally. Back over here, I put in PDB set trace, and it popped up a little prompt down here, and I could type in the name of the variable because I was trying to figure out what was going on with my response variable. Anyhow, I could see what was going on. I made a tweak or two, and then this was one of the surprises that I wasn't expecting. ChatGPT is actually now, Gemini is actually now built into Colab notebooks just by default. So it popped up a note that says, hey, Gemini can help you. Would you like it to help you and look at your code and make recommendations? And you have to accept that yes, there's going to be some sort of problem. You have to accept that that generative AI is not always right. So you set that EULA, if you will, and then it looks at the errors because it's detecting whether you have errors in your script. And then what it said was, hey, look, there are problems. It says, here's the theory. Your error message is keying out. The choices is not listed, and you got to get that into what's returned from ChatGPT. Here's some changes. And it went through, and it did several changes for me. And so then I was just able to copy and paste that by using this little button right here, copy and paste, right into the cell. And so I just basically copy and pasted the code in. And here's what it changed. It changed the message format for me, because it wasn't just a single string. The actual message format was coming over here like this. It had choices, and this is only one entry. It's like an array, and my entry has a message, a role, and the actual response or the content. And that was what my original script from ChatGPT was missing. The original script it gave me was just like, it says, where's it? Just give me a string. Right. Response. Ask GPT question. And the response was whatever the response came back. So it didn't do enough parsing. So Gemini stepped in and gave me the parsing code so that I could actually read and get the content out. And so now if you look at the response here, it says response equals request. It does the same thing, but then actually pulls the JSON, and then down here, answer is equal to response, choices, message, content. It walks through that JSON and gives me the results that you just see down here when I print it. Okay, so that was really nice. So Gemini stepped in. It was built into Colab. That was a real delightful surprise. The other thing is that when I was reading what Gemini said, something in there made me realize that Colab actually can check your variables. And so I found the variables window here. Either I popped it open or it mentioned it, and it gave me the variable inspector. And for example, you can see here's my response, and there's all the JSON from the response. So that was super nice because that's what I was looking for. I need the ability to look at the variables as I was trying to fix problems. Anyhow, so once I discovered that I could check variables, that was very helpful. Once I discovered I had Gemini here and helped me along the way, that was super cool. There's a couple of things along the way I forgot to mention, but I'll do that now, which is models. So when the original code that ChatGPT generated for me, it didn't have model. It didn't have a model reference. That was another thing that was a fail. Gemini realized that I needed a model reference, and it put one in here for me. It put in this GPT 3.5 Turbo 16K. It's okay, fine. Here's all the different models. I didn't care. I'll be happy to take whatever it told me, and GPT 3.5 is a decent model from, for this past year. They have later ones now, but that was fine by me. And but I had some problems. One of the errors that came up that that led me to find the response over here from Gemini was that the error actually said, hey, you don't have any tokens. You got to pay for some. Well, I thought it was free. It used to be free, but recently ChatGPT seems to have removed the free access. So, okay, fine. Fortunately, I like their model. Their model isn't that you have to pay month to month. You don't have to pay monthly, some flat fee if you never use it. That's a common thing. This is you pay as you go. Really nice. So I went in, I bought $10 worth of credits, and it'll automatically update to $10 again once I get below 5, which is what they said you have some minimums. It'll auto recharge if you want to. So I did that. So great. Now I got some tokens I can use. But I was a little worried about blowing through the tokens. And so here's a pricing page that they have. And had I stuck with that original GPT-3 model, 16K, I wanted to be sure I didn't just waste all my money here. I would have been paying somewhere around $3 or $4 a token, a million tokens. That's a little steep. I mean, I'm just practicing here. So I scrolled up and I said, fine, what model can I use? I don't need 4.0. I don't need the awesome model. I'm just doing some basic stuff here. And I chose instead this one here, 3.5 Turbo 0125. 50 cents for a million token. Okay, that's great. A million's going to last me a long time. I'm not wasting it. And so I copied and pasted this model reference into my code right here. So now, the things I've learned is you got to pay a little bit now. GPT no longer has to be completely free. At least from my experience, I had to do that. And you choose a model that you're willing to pay for. Again, this is basic experimental stuff. I don't need something awesome. So once I chose the right model, then I should be able to see. I actually haven't refreshed this. We'll see if I actually get a change or if I have to relog back in. Let's see what it tells me. Hey, look, how about that? So in my experiments, I spent a penny. Ooh, big dollars. Okay, that's great. So that makes me feel good. I can continue to experiment without spending a whole lot of money. And if I don't like it, I just stop paying because, again, it's pay as you go. Okay, those are all the highlights of this experience. The last thing I did, of course, was I went to Discord and I told it to give me, I used the Life of Adam, or the Birth of Adam. I won't show that, the Birth of Adam link. And I said, hey, give me an AI-themed version. And I like this one a lot. Illustrator is better with logos. Midjourney's not good with logos. So I popped in the Colab logo, the Gemini logo, and the ChatGPT logo and some text just because, again, Gemini's not great with logos. It tries, but it's just not there. So that's the end-to-end experience. You can do all of this, almost all for free, with a low-end PC, because this is all online with a free Colab notebook on your Gmail account. The only thing you do is you do have to put in $10 originally to pay for the tokens that you use. Again, it's not a flat monthly fee. I hope to add more GPTs as I go. I'll probably have to pay for some more tokens on different things like Claude and maybe Metas. I don't know which ones are free yet. But you can do this, and if you want a copy of the Colab notebook, let me know. Otherwise, eventually I'll probably post it out to GitHub somewhere.